keynote with commentary
Yes.
by Rabbi Soloveitchik.
Yes.
Keynote, this book that I showed the other day. Were you not here the other day? We were discussing that on Tisha B'Av, after morning and after the evening service as well, we recite some keynote. Keynote, they translate it here?
Yeah.
They don't say, they just call it keynote. Morning songs. Poems. One of the most famous ones ever is the one I just gave you on a piece of paper. Photocopied from this beautiful edition.
And here?
Yeah, it's in there. What page? I'll tell you. 555. Nah, he's got it for you.
Thank you.
Now, why is this one of the most popular ones ever? This was written by Rabbi Yehuda Levi. Can you read it for me, Yosef? The top left-hand corner, the title, the introduction on the top of the page.
This famous?
Yeah.
This famous piyut by Rabbi Yehuda Levi was widely copied and emulated throughout the ages, and is seen as the ultimate expression of the Jewish people longing for their homeland. There are several notable differences between the Ashkenazic and Sephardic versions. The Sephardic tradition has widely been considered more authentic, often quoted in Torah and academic circles, and is therefore printed here. In a departure from the otherwise Ashkenazi presentation of the keynote, commentary for this keynote begins on page 5.
Okay, so this, for some reason, even though this is an Ashkenazi book, they chose a little bit of a different version. But the point is, this poem, I was taught that I have to recite this poem off by heart in grade school. Many kids in Israel are taught this poem off by heart. And to facilitate that, it became one of the most popular songs. This was put to song. I'm not sure if it was Shlomo Carlebach or somebody else, but it's also very easy. I think it's one chord. A minor. That's it. maybe there's one other chord. A lot of songs are in A minor, right. Okay. So we'll just sing you the song first, so you probably know it already. It goes like this. You can follow the Hebrew words on the top of the page. Tzion, 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 halot tish'ali, halot tish'ali, lishlom asirayich. Again, Tzion, 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 halot tish'ali, halot tish'ali, lishlom asirayich. Ay, 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 Tzion. Easy words. Ay, 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 Tzion. Halo tish'ali, lishlom asirayich. Ay, 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 Tzion. Ay, 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 Tzion. Halo tish'ali, lishlom asirayich. It's A minor and E. That's A minor, E, A minor, E. That's it, the whole thing. That's a very simple song, and it's very 5 words. Tzion, halo tish'ali, lishlom asirayich. That's it. First 5 words of a beautiful poem that continues for 2 pages. I didn't even photocopy the whole thing. What does it mean? Tzion. Surely you will inquire after the well-being of your imprisoned ones. For those who seek your well-being and are the remnant of your flock. From west, east, north, and south, promote the well-being of the distant and the close from every direction, as well as the well-being of those bound by longing, shedding tears like dew on Mount Hermon, wishing to shed them on your mountains. It's a song about people that are yearning. They're imprisoned ones. Who's imprisoned? I don't understand. So the Jewish people are imprisoned in the exile. We cannot get to Jerusalem. We're in exile. We cannot get back to our own country. So everybody, all the Jews essentially are imprisoned. Being in exile is like being in prison. And so the poet turns to Zion. Zion, who's Zion? Jerusalem, Israel. And the poet asks, Zion, I want you to do something. I want you to put in a plea. I want you to ask Hashem. I want you to pray for your imprisoned ones, the ones who are imprisoned for you. They're longing to get to you. They're imprisoned on your behalf. Those who seek your well-being, these are Jews all over the world who pray for Jerusalem day and night. Vehem yeter adarayach. They are the remnant of your flock. Right? Jerusalem has a flock. The Jewish people, they're supposed to be filling up the city. We're all of Israel, by extension. You should be, please, inquire after the well-being of those imprisoned ones. Where are they now? Where are they imprisoned? In the north, in the east, in the west, in the south. Please seek shalom, rachok vekarov, those who are close and those who are far. Se'i mikol avarayich. Promote the well-being of them from every direction. Ushlom, the classic text is Shlom Asir Tikva. Do you know the word tikva? Do you know there's a song called HaTikva? Right, the national anthem. So Tikva, most versions of this poem have the third word on the third line, not ta'ava, but tikva. So they're imprisoned by their longing, by their hope. Pray for their shalom, pray for their peace. Noten d'ma'av ketal Hermon. They're giving tears like the dew upon Hermon. What's the dew upon Hermon? What dew is there upon Mount Hermon? Snow. That's right. Mount Hermon has always water, tons of water dripping off of it. So these Jewish people, they're imprisoned and they're shedding tears as the amount of water there is on Hermon. And all they want, what do the Jewish people want? They want their tears to be shed not in the Himalayan mountains and not even on the Hermon mountains. They want the tears to be shed in Jerusalem. They want to come on your mountains in all of Israel. So this is a beautiful poem, the metaphor of that Zion should be asking for its imprisoned ones. I think this song was made even more popular in the 70s. Many of you are not old enough to remember this. But in Soviet Russia, there were Jews who wanted to leave. And the communists didn't let them leave. And they became known as prisoners of Zion. Prisoners of Zion. This was what they were called. Asirei Zion. I think probably they named them that because of this poem of Rabbi Yehuda Levi. Zion is begging for the safety of her prisoners. Who are her prisoners? The prisoners of Zion. All those Jews who want to leave communist Russia, they're not being allowed to. Right? The communists took over for 70 years. They closed all the synagogues. You're not allowed to practice Judaism. Jews barely knew they were Jewish, but they hung on, especially after 1967, when they got some pride. Everybody heard that Israel, they don't know anything about the Judaism. They don't know how to say Shema Yisrael. but they knew they were Jewish, and they became much more interested in coming to Israel after 1967. So throughout the entire 70s, there was, and the 80s, there was a 20-year public campaign of Jews all around the world trying to free Soviet Jewry. What was their slogan? Does anybody know? The slogan was, "Let my people go." Taken from? Moshe to Paro, even before Fiddler on the Roof, believe it or not. It's in the Torah. That's what Moshe said to the Paro in Egypt, "Let my people go. Shalach et ami." 20 years, this was perhaps the most famous Jewish battle cry all around the world. In every government, in every street, there were demonstrations to free Soviet Jewry. This song became one of the battle cries. Tzion haloti shali lishlomo seirach. It's a poem written by Rabbi Yehuda Levi, and it's about the Jews in general in diaspora. Rabbi Yehuda Levi was very connected to the land of Israel, yearning to be in the land of Israel, from east and from west, from north and from south. And we're not going to read the entire poem, but it's very poignant. And this first paragraph I was taught off by heart as a child. It's part of every Jew to be yearning for Zion. Until today, there are people, we recite this on Tisha B'Av. Why do we recite this on Tisha B'Av? Here we are. There's no more communist Russia since the 90s. Right? It opened up. Over 1 million Jews came from Russia. The minute they allowed them, within a few years, there was 1 million immigrants. So why do we still sing this? Are there still prisoners of Zion?
In some countries.
In some countries, maybe. There's the minority. So why do we still say this?
Because they are not, all the Jews are not back to this.
Excellent. That's right. We have a lot of Jews in Israel. The biggest gathering in the world of Jews is in Israel. But still, the majority of Jews are not in Israel. And they may not be longing for Zion as much as they should. Many of them recite Zion in their prayers. Most of them don't even know what Zion means. Unfortunately, there's a lot of assimilation. A lot of the Jews are very disconnected from their heritage. But they're Jews nonetheless, and so in some ways, they're prisoners. They're prisoners of the galut, of the exile. And so we still pray for all of the Jews to come back, and we recite this beautiful, beautiful yearning poem. It's part of Jewish people's desire to come back. Even if you look on, let's just go over a little more of it. 4 lines from the end of the page in Hebrew, it says, Ech ye'erav li achol ushtot be'et echeze ki yischavu kelevim et kefirayich או איך מאור יום יהי מתוק לעיניי בעוד אראה בפי עורבים פגרי נשרייך. In the English for that is, how can I enjoy eating and drinking when I behold dogs dragging your young lions? The persecution of the Jews is what he means. Or how can the daylight be sweet to my eyes when I still see in the mouth of ravens the corpses of your eagles? So really, the last line says, when I remember Oholah, I absorb your poison. I remember Oholivama, Jerusalem, and suck dry your dregs. This is based on another Kina, which speaks about the 2 capital cities of the Jewish people. You know, there was Mamlechet Yehuda and Mamlechet Israel. In the First Temple times, there was a division. And the capital was the capital of Jerusalem remained from King David's time, but the kingdom of Israel became with the capital city of Shomron, Samaria. It gets a nickname of Oholah, and Jerusalem gets a nickname of Oholivama. So there's another poem, which I didn't bring for you today, maybe tomorrow we'll take a look. It's actually a play when I was the rabbi of my community, I led the services. It's one of the keynote we say on the nighttime. After reading Megillat Echa, I said there's 5 keynote as well. One of the keynote is a dialogue between Oholah and Oholivama. These 2 nicknames for Jerusalem and Samaria, and they're competing with each other about which one's calamity is worse. I'll show it to you maybe another day. It's a very, very dramatic poem. In any case, Rav Yehuda Levi says, how can I eat? How can I drink when I see the terrible things and the torture of the exile? Take a look at the beginning of the 3rd paragraph. Epol le'api alei artzech ve'ertze avanayich me'od va'achonen et afarayich. I will fall to my face upon your land and treasure your stones and cherish your soil. You've heard of maybe you've seen pictures. Many Yemenite Jews, when they came to Israel in the 50s, they got to the land of Israel. What did they do? They kissed the earth. Some people still doing that today. It's a little bit harder to do on the tarmac of the asphalt of Ben Gurion Airport. But in the days when you came off the boat into the sand, you would hug the earth, the actual earth of the land. And Rabbi Yehuda Levi even says, based on Tehillim 102, Tehillim 102 says that there's going to be a rejuvenation, a return, that there'll be a newly created Am Yisrael. When is Am Yisrael going to be reborn? He says, Ki ratzu avadecha et avanea. Ki ratzu ertze avanaich me'od. When the Jewish people show a yearning for the land of Israel, that's a sign that the redemption is coming. And here Rabbi Yehuda Levi, always there was, he's describing how much what's it? This is, I will fall to my face upon you and treasure your stones. So when and cherish your soil. When the Jewish people treasure your stones, he says this is going to be a sign of the rebirth of the Jewish nation. And we saw this on a grand scale 100 years ago with the first Zionist Congress, and this even before the Zionist Congress. There was somehow all over the world there was a waking up and a desire to go back to the land of Israel. For thousands of years we were in exile. We went from this country to that country, this country, that country. For some reason, Hashem must have been guiding us that Jews all around the world, it woke up in them the spark to treasure the stones of the land of Israel, to come back, to want to come back. Rabbi Yehuda Levi had it at all times, and he was therefore something of a national poet for the Zionist movement. Rabbi Yehuda Levi lived in the 13th century in Spain. He was feeling, he has another poem which I was taught off by heart as well. Libi b'mizrach, my heart is in the east. Ve'anochi b'sof ma'arav, and yet I personally am far away in the west. He was in Spain, that's west of the land of Israel. Right? Jewish people in Europe, in North Africa, for all the years that they were praying towards Jerusalem to the east. There's Judaica until today, all sorts of fancy artwork that say the word east on it with a picture of Jerusalem. Because Jews would pray to the east, because they were in the west. Rabbi Yehuda Levi has another poem. My heart is in the east. A Jew is always yearning for Yerushalayim. And I am so far in the west. Maybe is it part of this poem? Let me see. If you look at line number 5 from the top of the page, Libi lebet el. Have you been to Beit El? Where Rav Lissman lives, just underneath Beit El?
Yes.
Vilipniel is another name of a town in Israel. Me'od Yehemeh, Vilamachanai. V'chol pigei tahorayich. All the places where your pure ones pray. Sham hashchina shcheina lach. There the divine presence resides close by. So this is one of the most beautiful poems. Again, this comes from this book. What number is it? Number 36. It's page 555. So I'm giving you highlights. We're not going to go through all of it. But this is Piyut 36. And in most lists, like I showed you here, 1, 2, 3, different lists I collected over the years of which ones to say, it always is going to include Tzion, Halo Tishali, this poem from Rabbi Yehuda Levi. We'll do the song one more time. Too bad I don't have a guitar. Anyways, you're not supposed to play music during the 9 days. So you guys should know this song. And if your child wants to learn how to play the guitar, teach them this song first. 2 chords, A minor and E. A minor and E. Tzion, 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 Halo Tishali, Halo Tishali, Lishlom Asirayich. Help me. Tzion, 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 Halo Tishali, Halo Tishali, Lishlom Asirayich. Now the words are easy. Ay, 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 Tzion. Ay, 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 Tzion. Next word. Halo tish'ali lishlom asirayich. Ay, 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 Tzion. Ay, 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 Tzion. Halo tish'ali Lishlom asirayich. Okay? You think so? How long have you played guitar? You don't play? So why do you think there's more than 2 chords? Do you play piano? Do you play any instrument? No. Which one? Yeah, keyboard? Okay, so this is the first kina that I wanted to show you. And you can see that there's lots of Hebrew words. The truth is, the Hebrew is quite poetic. Poetry, what is it called? The third word on the page of this famous piyut. What is a piyut? A piyut is a liturgical poem. It's another name for a liturgical poem called piyut. So the piyutim, their language is sometimes difficult because it's poetry in Hebrew of the Middle Ages. It's not modern Hebrew, and it's not prose. It's not ani rotze glida. It's a little more complicated, and they use words, as you can see. Can you see quotations? From where does he throw in some psukim? Do you see from where? Tehillim, and Yeshayahu. So there's always mixed in. So it's quite the text in Hebrew, even for Hebrew speakers, modern Hebrew speakers, it's difficult. It has to be studied. Poetry has to be studied. You can't just read it like a newspaper. And so that's why you get from 50 poems to 5 hours. Some people sit and they study these kinot and they say them slowly with the translation, with explanations. And I'm going to send you an amazing resource I just got this morning. This book, it's called Kinot Masoret Harav, the Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik Kinot, is compiled from his teaching. Every Tisha B'Av, year after year, he taught the Kinot.
I think maybe you sent some. I think it might be on group.
An excerpt from here. An excerpt. 1 or 2 pages. So what I'm going to send you are recordings audio recordings of Rabbi Soloveitchik himself in the 50s and in the 60s, recorded on Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av, you're allowed to tape record. You're allowed to, and MP3 files now. This book was based on transcriptions of those lectures, of those explanations. And you can hear Rabbi Soloveitchik, who is known as a wonderful orator. He's really gripping, and with his unique European accent, and it's wonderful. So someone just sent me, there must be like 30 files of different lectures by Rav Soloveitchik himself, together with a few PDF files of his most famous books, The Lonely Man of Faith, for free, PDF. A few articles about Rav Soloveitchik and his teaching, but the primary resource is all these recordings of Rav Soloveitchik's own voice. You know, he died in the 80s, I think, in, don't remember exactly when he died. Maybe in 90, I don't know exactly when he died, but a long time ago. And but it's amazing that we can hear him himself. His presentations are amazing. I'll send you the link. Okay, so this is the first poem from the keynote. So far, so good. I want to show you another one. And I'm showing you ones which are a little bit easier to learn because there's a tune. Most of the keynote are recited. They're not actually sung. There's really only one exception. Right? The one we just learned is not really sung. That is a popular song, what I taught you. On Tisha B'Av morning, nobody's going to be singing it. But this one, in most synagogues around the world, it's number 45. So you can imagine it's at the end, right? We said there's 50 keynote. This is number 45 out of the 50. It's the only one which has a tune to it. Now the truth is, you might have actually heard the melody already. Why? Where would you have heard the melody? This Friday night. Did you go to services? Were you in shul Friday night? Yes? What song do they sing Friday night? In most communities they sing. L'cha Dodi. L'cha Dodi. This Friday night in many shuls they sing it to the tune of this kina. There's only one kina that has a tune. This is it. And sometimes, so maybe you notice they sang L'cha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela L'cha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela. That's the basic melody. It's like a chant. It's a little bit mournful. Some people don't like to do it on Shabbat because you're supposed to be happy on Shabbat. But it is the Shabbat Chazon. It was the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. It has elements of mourning in this time period. So many shuls, they do that. And maybe they're saying, we want to change the kina into a... Right? Kina is the singular for this lament. We want to change the kina of kinot. It's a singular of kinot. We want to change the lament into a song of joy. Like L'cha Dodi is a song of joy. So anyways, this is the kina, the most famous one perhaps, that has, the only one with a tune, Eli Tzion ve'areha. The word Eli means lament. Don't get confused. Aleph, Lamed Yud can also mean my God. There's a famous book by Herman Wouk, an American writer, who just died a couple years ago. He was a very popular, he won awards. He had the best sellers worldwide of novels. He happened to also be a very connected and Orthodox Jew. Many people didn't know that Herman Wouk, He wrote mysteries and novels about love on the oceans, and some of the most famous books of the 20th century were by Herman Wouk. And towards the end of his life, he also wrote another book called This Is My God, all about Judaism. And a beautiful description of what is Judaism and what it means. Written for the unaffiliated, for people who know nothing about Judaism, for non-Jews. It was very popular because he was a very popular writer. Anything by Herman Wouk became right away in the top 10 bestseller list all around the world. So he wrote a book about Judaism called This Is My God. It's a lovely introduction to Judaism. If you want to find it, I can give you a copy. I think I have a copy at home. I also have it, they translated it into Hebrew, believe it or not. For people who don't, Israelis who now, they know Hebrew, but they don't know anything about Judaism. Unfortunately, it's a phenomenon. This Is My God by Herman Wouk. So the name of the book in Hebrew is Eli, which means my God. This is not the meaning here. Eli has another meaning, and here it means lament, to cry out, to sing out of pain. So that's what the meaning is at the beginning of the sentence. Eli Tzion ve'areha. Just like we saw in the previous Kina, Rabbi Yehuda Levi told Tzion what to do. What did he tell Tzion to do? To ask for the well-being of her prisoners. So here, the poet, I don't know who wrote this one, the poet is telling Tzion to lament, to cry out, to sing a mournful song. Tzion and her cities, what should they cry? Like a woman in her labor pains. Kimo isha v'tzireha. Tzir is a birth pain. It's a contraction. When a woman gives birth, she has contractions, right, to push the baby out. Those are tzirim. Tzirei leida, the birth pangs of redemption, of birth. So perhaps that's why, by the way, in the Ashkenazi kinot, not only is this the only kina that's sung, it's also the one that we all get up for. You've been sitting on the floor for maybe an hour. Your back hurts. Your legs are uncomfortable. You're skipping because all this stuff in Hebrew is too much and you don't understand it anyways. And so the synagogue, the rabbi chose the best ones. Well, however long it takes an hour, it takes 2 hours. Let's say they don't skip. 2 hours. Everybody's mumbling through all the Hebrew. At the end, almost done. It's almost like redemption is coming. You get to stand up to sing this one, Kina number 45. We say it standing and we sing it together, the whole community. Everybody up till now has been praying silently to himself. Some people are actually crying, but some people are just trying to understand the kinot. In any case, this one, we all stand up and we sing it together. And one of the expressions, I think the most powerful expressions and telling expressions is lament Zion and her cities like a woman in her labor pains, like a maiden girl in sackcloth for the husband of her youth. So we're telling Tzion to cry and lament for her husband. Who's her husband? A woman crying for the husband of her youth. Can you imagine a young bride who the husband goes off to war and is lost for years? Maybe he died. Maybe he was killed. She's crying. There's no more pure cry for all the hope that she had to have a life with her husband. So the Jewish people, the land of Israel, the Zion and her cities, should be crying for who? Who's the husband? Hashem, and the Jewish people as well. He goes on to say, for the intrusion of God's blasphemers into the chambers of her sanctuary. It's almost like the intimacy of her marriage bed was violated by the marauders, the Romans, the Babylonians. Also the next, and then it goes, the rest of the poem, as you can see, they all start with the word aleh. Aleh with an ayin is for the, and the poet goes through all the things that Zion and her cities have to cry out for the exile of God's servants, for the daily sacrifices. I'm skipping a paragraph. For the children of her kings, the sons of David, her princes. For the glory that was dispelled, I'm skipping. For the wounds and many blows with which her sainted ones were struck. And for the smashing upon the rock of her babes, her young ones. For the joy of her enemy, rejoicing over her downfall. For the torture of those once free, her noblemen, her pious ones. So there's a lot of descriptions of detail, poetically describing all the things that Zion and her cities have to cry for. And of course, we're crying ourselves. But the most important line is line number 1. Cry out, Zion, like a woman in her labor pains. Why is that so important? Because the Jewish people, even though when we're sad, we're despondent, we're sitting on the floor, we're mourning, we never lose hope. That this suffering, the pain, is horrible, but it's going to be birth pangs. It's going to be part of a process of the ultimate redemption. It's not for naught, all of the sufferings that we went through. It's like a woman who's having labor pains. What gets her through it, even though she knows this is horrible? I don't know, I've never given birth. But I'm told that it's pretty high up there on the level of pain, on the pain threshold. Excruciating pain. How do women do it? She thinks about her baby. She thinks about, I'm going to have a baby. Going to make life. Life is going to come from this experience. So I think perhaps that's why there's a little tinge of hope towards the end of the keynote. This is 45 out of 50. Some people skipped 46, 47, 48, and 49, and 50. Sometimes this is the last keynote sung. As I said, we're standing already. We're not sitting on the ground anymore. Standing and getting up is, we're going to move on from the mourning towards rebuilding. So this is, I think, the atmosphere a little bit in some synagogues of Eli Zion. Okay, let's sing it together. Okay, the words are Eli Zion ve'areha, may Zion and her cities should lament. Kemo, like Isha b'tzireha, like a woman in her birth pangs. V'chivtula chagorat sak, and like a maiden, a virgin, who is wearing sackcloth. Al baal ne'oreha, for the husband of her youth. Ready? Eli Zion ve'yareha כמו אישה בציריה וכיבתו לה חגורת שק על בעל נעוריה. We'll just do the same one again to get you used to the words. The same tune continues, and we're going to be using this tune. You have to learn this tune. Okay? You got it, Hananel? Eli Zion ve'yareha כמו אישה בציריה וכיבתו לה חגורת שק על בעל נעוריה. Let's do one more. עלי ארמון אשר נוטש באשמת צאן עדריה ויביאת מחרפייה בתוך מקדש חדריה. Okay, we're not going to read all the stanzas, but I have for you. Now, if you look at the top of the page, that some people have in the memory of the victims of the Holocaust, they add into the book. This new edition of the Kinot actually has it in the book. So I photocopied this poem. Some rabbis don't like reciting this one, but I think it's quite popular because it was written in the same tune. it was meant to be recited and sung with the same tune, and it starts with the same, you can see it has the same structure. The first word is Eli, lament. And each stanza starts off with the al, tev, al, about this, for the, just like we saw in the previous one. So this is a more modern kina, lament, and it's about the Holocaust. Let's see what the words say. Shmuel, can you read for us from the top a little bit?
In English?
Yes, please.
Lament, lament, my soul, cry out and mourn, O daughter of Israel. In eulogy, in howls of grief, the flames have consumed Israel. For the genocide so carefully planned, of pangs of grief that cascades of blood, none was spared, not old, not young. All were sacrificed, holy and pure. For the newborn babes, for the nursing infants, crushed and dismembered against the cruel stones, for the blood that flowed in the apathetic streets, as helpless parents looked on in defeat. For the holy communities wiped away, the houses of prayer and study, consumed in flames, in burning pyres, majestic centers of Jewish life. For the generations that were cut down, blood of the fathers with the blood of sons. In the killing fields of Auschwitz, they were expunged, in the furnaces of the crematorium. For the imprisoned of God, clothed in only in rags, expiring in droves, in multitudes, in Treblinka and Majdanek, their bones were scattered, left to roam.
Okay, this is just the beginning. There's another whole 2 pages. And it can be sung as follows from the top. We're just going to do the top one. Eli, Eli, nafshi bechi, v'za'aki, bat Yisrael, misped se'i, v'hityapechi, ala esh be'Yisrael, etc., etc. So it follows the same tune, follows the same pattern, and that's why it's very popular. It's written by Yehuda Leib Bialer. I don't think he was a rabbi, and so in many communities they have other kinot written by holier people, and I don't know, maybe they had more quotes from psukim. And but whatever it is, the point is that we're crying for the national tragedies of the Jewish people. And so I showed you, how many kinot did we see? The first one was Tzion, Haloti Shali, right? Next one was Eli Tzion ve'areha. And finally, this new kina for the Holocaust, Eli Eli. Okay, so we learned 3 of the kinot, 3 out of the 50. And I'm going to send you a link to, there must be hours and hours and hours of Rav Soloveitchik. So here you wanted something to do, to listen to Rav Soloveitchik's presentation explaining the kinot is unbelievable. I think that's what I'm going to do this year. I didn't have it before this. The truth is, when I was in Kollel, when I was studying to be a rabbi, I did some work on the side. Gotta supplement the little stipend. And one of the things I worked on was this book. The lectures of Rav Soloveitchik about Tisha B'Av, on Tisha B'Av, were, I transcribed some of this myself. Yeah. My name's not mentioned here. It's okay. It's fine. But it went through, there's different versions of it, and there's been lots of revisions, but finally now it's out, it's beautiful, it's easy to read, and if you want to hear the original, the way Rabbi Soloveitchik presented with his drama and beautiful turns of phrase, he was such a great teacher, and he really knew how to bring things to life, and it's a link in the chain of the generations to the great chain of Torah scholars, leaders of the Jewish people. The Seder, so that's our first part for today. The Kinot. Maybe tomorrow I'll show you one more Kina, another Kina the next day. We're not going to cover all 50. But we actually mentioned another one. We mentioned that the Kina about the poem between Shomron and Jerusalem, that they were arguing which one's it's the one said at night. But we didn't show it to you inside. Okay. Questions, comments, complaints, jokes. It's not Tisha B'Av yet. We have to keep up our spirits.
The quotations here, Rabbi, they're like for one line. When they quote in the text, like Yoel or.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the one line, just one phrase, even sometimes even half a line. But it's clearly a quotation from the original, yeah, from the Tanakh. I will say that today there's lots of demonstrations, and tomorrow, and there's a lot going on in the land of Israel, and we have a lot to pray for in these 9 days. There's a lot of strife, unfortunately hatred, going on in Israel. I'll just say a few words about what it's about. I'm not going to really talk politics, but as we're speaking, there's a big prayer at the Kotel, and tonight there's a big demonstration in Tel Aviv. Almost every day there's been demonstrations for 3-4 months now, all around the country. The outward face of it is simply that there's supposed to be a balance of power between the various branches of government. And many people feel that the balance of power has been imbalanced. I think it's a fact that it's imbalanced. And so the current government has declared that they want to fix it. But many people who are against the government anyways, they're using it to try to bring down the government. And essentially they're saying that the way the government's trying to rebalance is itself a threat to Israel's democracy. So there's, people in favor of the reform, people against the reform. Unfortunately, it's becoming uglier and uglier, and I just hope nobody gets hurt, but really, it's not Hashem. The point is that the tones are getting shriller and shriller in terms of all sorts of threats, bringing in people saying we won't serve in the army anymore, and the really irresponsible statements, in my opinion. But what's nice, I always try to find the silver lining, is that both sides of the protesters are waving Israeli flags. And as of this morning, both sides of the protesters are praying. There's a joint prayer at the Kotel. Friday night, there was if those who live in Jerusalem might have noticed, there's a demonstration on Shabbat in Jerusalem, and the demonstrators were coming from Tel Aviv area towards Jerusalem. It's almost sort of symbolic. Tel Aviv, like the symbol of the left wing, Jerusalem, symbol of the right wing. Anyways, they made this march, this demonstration, in stages every day, sort of moving closer and closer to Jerusalem. Part of the demonstration was, on Shabbat, they camped out in the hills of Jerusalem, in the forest near Jerusalem. And even the leftist camp, they had a Kabbalat Shabbat service. So, Baruch Hashem, I think at the core, the people who live in Zion want to have a Jewish country. They want the state to succeed. There is a big fight about power. And people perhaps feel they're losing the power that they had, and other people are taking away the power that belongs to them. There's a fight over power. But I hope that we can overcome the differences. And in the big, big, big picture, Israel will get stronger from this, and not chas v'chalila anything in the opposite direction. All right?
The most important, we are not beating each other.
I hope it stays that way. No violence, Baruch Hashem. There's always a little bit of rowdiness whenever there's a crowd and people blocking the streets, and people don't like to be blocked. So there's tensions for sure. But Baruch Hashem, no violence in the streets, Baruch Hashem.
It's very close to my house. So
You saw the protesters, yeah?
every Saturday, every night. But
Yeah.
nobody is punching each other.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, that's right. With all the complaints, that this government's going to bring a dictatorship, they're free to demonstrate. So I think we're very far away from a dictatorship.
And the police is protecting.
Yes, that's right. Maybe a little too protective. Anyways, that was yes, sir.
They even protest on the Sabbath, right?
Yes. Yeah. The protest. Not everybody keeps the Shabbat. Unfortunately, they travel on Shabbat and they use the megaphones and the electronics, but they're allowed to demonstrate. It's unfortunate if they violate the sensitivities if they go into a religious community on Shabbat. I think that would be a little bit inappropriate. But people are very, very angry. People are very, very. I believe a lot of them are misinformed. But whatever it is, I'm not going to get into the details of the political situation, how this fight is being used. But there is a power struggle. Hashem should guide us, guide our leaders, that we should live through this fight and come out stronger. Okay? You want things to calm down? Yeah, sure. I also want things to calm down. Okay, we're up to page 207, learning the laws of Tisha B'Av. We still have 10 pages or so to go, or more. 15 pages or so. So let's go. We're up to working on Tisha B'Av. We actually started that, and we did page 207, so let's move ahead to page 208. Now we get to the actual practices in the synagogue. Things we've been saying up till now. We said that we read the Eicha at night, and we darken the synagogue. We sit on the floor, and by the way, I don't usually read Eicha in the synagogue. I go outside. There's a group every year now for 30 years that goes, you know where I live in Tekoa. Next to Tekoa, there is an international heritage site. What am I referring to? Herodion, it's called. Herodium. It's a man-made mountain by King Herod from when he lived 2,000 years ago. King Herod died, I think, about year 3. So he made this palace near my home. Now it's an archaeological site. There's remnants, and you can get tours there. And it's usually open from 8 to 4 every day, and they have a movie, and they have tour guides, and you can bus loads of tourists come from all over the world to see. It's an amazing thing. It's a man-made palace from 2,000 years ago, and they have the decorations that they made, a theater that King Herod made for the Romans coming to visit the land of Israel. This was his winter palace. Right? In the summer it's too hot, but in the winter it's his palace. It was his palace just outside of Jerusalem. It's warmer, and they uncovered massive structures. Then, of course, this fortress was used by the Jewish rebels after the destruction. And the rebels during the destruction. Right, Herod died in year 3, but in 67, the Great Revolt, the Jews rebelled against the Romans, and the Roman legions came and destroyed Judea. And then again, in year 135, 60 years later, Boker Tov. That's right, you're coming today. Welcome, of course. Yeah. Maybe Yehuda will tell you more of the history. We're going to finish our halachot B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow. Yehuda Cohen's going to do a session. I was just saying that in year 135, the Bar Kokhba revolt. So I was telling the guys, Yehuda, that I don't never read the Eicha in my synagogue with the dimmed lights on the floor. I go to Herodian with thousands and thousands of Jews coming from around Gush Etzion, Jerusalem area. And they come, we read Eicha on the floor in a destroyed synagogue from the time of the destruction. And you can see Jerusalem, just like probably the people at the time of the destruction, at the time of the Great Revolt. They saw Jerusalem burning from Herodian. It's not far. You could see, they probably saw the Beit HaMikdash in flames. As on Tisha B'Av, some 2,000 years ago. So it's a special place to read the Eicha and sit on the floor, get a little dirty, a little dusty.
Machon Wolf, you said back.
Nice, yeah. Okay, anyways, Yehuda Vakasha, both can change that, turn it off, whatever.